France as he raced on his own for 235 kilometers on what seemed an impossible mission.
Sad blonde with the color of her hair, like a cheap distraction for a new affair. She never finished before it began.
Suicide? No. After the second longest escape in Tour history, he won by almost 2 minutes and pulled on the leader's jersey. Today he rides through his native Normandy in yellow. The start this morning being made from the port of Le Havre with Thierry Marie wearing the symbol of French pride. And Robert Miller, who crashed yesterday, is okay and continues in the Tour de France. Well, at midday, the 195 riders left the port this morning, and just 3 missing since the start a week ago. Stephen Roche, Rolf Sorensen and Marshall Guéant, who crashed out yesterday. This is the route they face, 167 kilometers to Argentan, 3 sprints along the route for time bonuses, and Thierry Marie will be under pressure, as indeed will be Sean Kelly. Hello and welcome. This is the town of Argentan, a town welcoming the Tour de France for the very first time in its history. And by way of a bonus now, they have a local rider in the leader's yellow jersey. Later on in the programme, Gary Imlach will explain to us exactly what it means for a town to play host for the first time. Well, yesterday, after only 24 kilometres, Thierry Marie was off on his own. He faced a ride of 235 kilometres if he intended to win the stage. As we know now, he did. It left for his team a simple tactic. Paul Sherwin explains.
Whilst Marie was making his solo breakaway, his teammates carried out their part of a pre-arranged plan. By placing all their riders near the front, they intimidate the teams who are chasing, and in this instance they even managed to block the whole road. Whilst doing so, they will impose a false tempo, just slow enough so as not to eat into Marie's lead, but fast enough to try and discourage other attacks. Sometimes, however, it is annoying, and when there is the slightest gap, someone will try and slip through. However, every little trick helps to protect Marie's lead. At the end of the day, everything worked well for the Castorama team, and Marie, thanks to their teamwork, conserved enough time on the line not only to win the stage, but to take the yellow jersey.
And so to the general classification this morning, Thierry Marie now the leader by 1 minute 4 seconds ahead of Sean Kelly. The Soviet rider Abdu Japarov in 3rd place, Greg LeMond down to 4th and Eric Breukink down to 5th place. Of the other Tour favourites, Akir Pucci is in 46th place, is still well over 3 minutes back. Miguel Indurain is 48, 52nd Gianni Bugno and 58th Pedro Delgado. And Robert Miller, after that crash yesterday, has slipped away to 150th, over 7 minutes behind. In the first sprint today, which came after only 4.5 kilometres, Johan Museeuw snatched the 6 seconds bonus ahead of Abdu Japarov and Laurent Jalabert. But the second place by Abdu Japarov means now he continues in 2nd place in the Tour de France, going ahead of Sean Kelly. And also in the second sprint, which came at 68.5 kilometres at Tourville-en-Auge, Rolf Goltz, the man who is currently in the lead, was away on his own at this point, taking the bonus time of 6 seconds. Abdu Japarov winning from the main field, Museeuw in 2nd place. And again, the crashes have had their effect on the Tour de France today, because Fabio Parra, a man we might have seen challenge in the mountains, has abandoned with his injuries. And this is Rolf Goltz, who's trying to survive to the finish. We're at 115 kilometres covered, and the gap is now 3 minutes over the field. The biggest gap that Goltz has had today, 4 minutes and 35 seconds. Overnight, he lies at 12th overall, 2 minutes 29 seconds behind Thierry Marie. So this move at the moment makes him the new yellow jersey on the road, and the surprises continue.
Well, every day's been a surprise. This is Vimoutier, where the famous French classic Paris-Camembert finishes, and Goltz looks to be tiring a little bit. We'll see a little better how he is here, because there's a climb out of Vimoutier see what he looks like, but his lead's starting to come down now with the Castorama team on the front of the field there, for once defending the lead of Thierry Marie, because once in the past, Marie had the lead with his prologue win, and then they let that breakaway go on the first day of the Tour de France last year. This year, I think, with Marie's time trialling, they have a little bit more confidence that he can keep the yellow jersey for a few more days to come.
And now a chance to see the field, the gendarme in the middle there with the yellow flag indicating the hazard of the island. And again today we have this sad case of riders crashing and the Tour losing Fabio Parra of Colombia with a crash. That long straight line at the front is the Castorama team trying to spearhead the big peloton along, and the gap is coming down now. The latest time gap, 2 minutes 50 seconds. And Thierry Marie, I think, will ride very hard towards the end of this stage. I would think, Paul, he's not going to be robbed of his moment in Argentan today.
Well, definitely not, because after the prologue, he also said one of his major objectives in this year's Tour de France after the prologue was the time trial. Now, he's never really had a great deal of success in long time trials, but he's matured a little bit with his age, so maybe he feels confident of being able to rival the riders like Eric Brooking and Greg LeMond tomorrow. There is the blackboard that keeps the riders informed of what the time gap is, and as we've just said, it's 2 minutes 50.
I think it's worth recounting as well, Paul, the situation at breakfast this morning in our hotel, which was 100 kilometers away from the start this morning, and the young lady who came to serve us breakfast was Thierry Marie's sister. Absolutely incredible. She said tomorrow she was having the day off from the hotel because she was going to watch her brother, hopefully wearing the yellow jersey in the time trial. And to say the least, she was over the moon.
She was definitely a very happy young lady.
And Rolf Goltz trying to spoil the party for tomorrow, that's for sure. He's on the climb now as we leave Vermoutier. But he doesn't look as fluid, Paul, as the rider we've seen in his best season, 1988, when he won 15 races. He doesn't look as sharp, does he?
He doesn't really. He seems to be suffering a little bit. He's just gone past the 1 kilometre to go sign on the climb there. But you see how he's rocking his shoulders a little bit. He's not too sure of himself because he's looking over his shoulder to see what the situation is. The rider's now at the bottom of the climb here in Vermoutier, and they've actually slowed down a little bit their chase there. There's the giant camembert on the left-hand side of the road.
When we drove past, they had a problem getting it up there in the wind.
But what has actually happened now is the Castorama team have slowed down their chase a little bit because they've got Goltz at a reasonable distance, and they know that towards the end of the race there'll be the natural speeding up of the field when the teams with all the sprinters accelerate and try to bring him back. So they're just going to keep it stable at about 2.5 minutes and wait for him to die slowly.
So Rolf Goltz heading up towards the summit now. He's fighting to hold some sort of tempo here. This is quite a difficult climb for those of you that holiday in Normandy as we head on today through the department. It's a very beautiful department to live. It's also the same department from where Jacques Anquetil came from, the winner of the Tour de France 5 times. And it's also extremely lumpy for a cyclist, and there's very few flat roads. It's certainly the most beautiful part of France with the half-timbered houses here. Goltz concentrating hard. It's been a mixed week for Ali Ostia, hasn't it, with the loss of their team yellow jersey, Rolf Sorensen. And now, of course, Goltz trying to add a little bit of compensation to the week by winning the stage at the finish today. He's done pretty well, though. He's picked up the special sprint, which was the second sprint on the course. There's still one more sprint to come at Enns. Chance to look at the gears, Paul, a chance to tell us what gears you think he'll have chosen for the climb.
Well, he'll probably be using around about the 18 sprocket, which is just an average size gear with a 53-tooth chainring at the front. The first 10 days of the Tour de France, there haven't been any surprising climbs along the route, so the mechanics won't have too hard a job. They'll leave those gear ratios, a very close gear ratio, with 1-tooth sprocket difference from the 12 teeth to the biggest gear to 19 at the smallest gear. But when we get to the mountains, they may well have to change those sprockets every night because they look at the race route and they discuss with the riders what gears they want to use, and the mechanics then have to make the necessary changes.
And they're sitting at the front, riding tempo as they call it, are the team riders from Castorama, and the yellow jersey of Thierry Marie is just in the front of the pack. So as we head up towards the summit of the climb here, the Côte de Saint-Germain, the Côte de Marie rather, it is Rolf Goltz in the lead, and there is confirmation. The peloton at 2 minutes 48. Things are beginning to swing in favour of the yellow jersey, and we'll take a short break.
Short of being chosen as the site for the next Olympics, which is a bit of a long shot when your big attraction is the local bar to back, the greatest honour any French town can get is to be visited by the Tour de France. There are 10 towns getting their first visit this year. Argentan is one of them. Imagine Charles and Diana on a cycling holiday of civic receptions around Britain, and you get an idea of the effect the Tour has on a place like Argentan and its 18,000 residents. Yesterday, the place was being cleaned from top to bottom and the right community image carefully cultivated. Even the local boulangerie had interrupted baguette production to rise to the occasion. The mayor, meanwhile, was beside himself with civic pride.
But it's also the expression of national spirit. Giro and other competitions run by our neighbours aren't as wonderful and as popular as the Tour de France.
Cycling is part of the culture here, and each town treasures its own history. A special exhibit at Argentan's town hall includes the last British bike to be victorious here, a folding army model which arrived on the back of a paratrooper in June 1944. Outside in the foyer is a display of local school children's work, demonstrating their mastery of the 3 R's, reading, writing and recognition of the main Tour jerseys. Evidently, Eno and Anquetil are as much a part of the history curriculum as Robespierre and the Revolution. Topically enough, Argentan's current claim to fame is the race leader who was born close by, and informed opinion in the cafes yesterday about the winner of this stage was tinged almost imperceptibly with local bias.
Thierry Marie.
Thierry Marie. Thierry Marie.
Thierry Marie.
Another subject everyone in Argentan seems to be agreed on is the absolute lack of necessity to turn up for work today. Some residents, trapped by the race route, couldn't if they wanted. The rest of the population is engaged in a show of community skiving. Young and old, shirking workers and truant bosses, everyone wants to be able to say they walked down the finish line when the Tour de France came to town.
And I think, Gary, the whole town awaits that moment. But the race picture is changing here. We're inside 10 kilometres from the finish now. 4 riders are in the lead. Rolf Goltz has been joined by Eduardo Chozas, Per Pedersen and Ribeiro, the only Brazilian professional in the race. And the main field is breathing right down their necks. These are 4 more riders going off the front. 35 seconds is now the official time gap. And here is the main field. And this is a crash at the back of the main field. The rider in the blue jersey there is Mike Carter of the Motorola team. And also, it looks as though the Panasonic rider is the Soviet rider Dmitry Zhdanov, who's being taken onto the side of the road here. But he clearly wants to be held back up by the race doctor, Gerard Porte, and wants his bike back. And the other rider involved in this pileup, yet again we've been treated to a pileup in the last few kilometres, is Eric Machler of the Carrera team. And so at the back of the field there is chaos, and at the front of the field here the race goes on. Well, the field generally regrouping at the head, but I would think that Zhdanov certainly is going to have a lonely ride, just as Robert Miller did yesterday over these remaining kilometres. And this breakaway has been most interesting now, because Goltz, who was away from the 60th kilometre of the race today, joined at 141 kilometres by Eduardo Chozas, himself a winner of 4 stages in the Tour de France over the past. And then Per Pedersen crossed the gap on his own when the Peloton were only 25 seconds behind. And then Ribeiro of Brazil and the RMO team came across. And those 4 really have got themselves together now, and they're holding off the whole of the Peloton. Latest time check coming through, Paul, and it's up to 37 seconds at the moment. There's a chance they might survive now.
Well, they might just survive. The peloton is only just beginning to organise itself, and the riders at the front are all working very, very well together. It might be a godsend for Rolf Goltz there, who was away for so long on his own, and now he's got 3 helpers, and Chozas is a man who really can pile the pressure on there. At the bottom of the screen, you've got the average speed, round about the 50 kilometres an hour, so they're doing an extremely good ride here. The rider in the white jersey there from RMO is Ribeiro, who's a Brazilian rider, quite an exception in cycling these days. There aren't too many Brazilian riders around. The Amaya rider at the back was Per Pedersen.
And the peloton basically has regrouped after the crash. There's the world champion Rudy Darlens on the far side of the course.
Well, Panasonic team really upset recently because Olaf Ludwig just keeps missing out on the victory, so they've decided they're the team today that will give try and give the stage victory to Olaf Ludwig. They're getting to the front there. That's Rudy Darnens in the white jersey who's doing the chasing at the moment, but they're really going to have to pull everything out now to try and catch these 4 riders in the front who are working extremely well together. Now you can see here all the Panasonic riders clambering to the front to try and bring down that breakaway. We've got the Panasonic riders there, PDM, and also 1 or 2 riders from Histor coming in there as well to help this bunch shoot along there, because Remmig Stump, the big German rider, seems to have been sprinting extremely well. He's actually won the sprint a couple of times the last few days, and he's the man who may well do the goods for them.
Well, Remmig Stump certainly has come back this year, because I thought he was beginning to lose his edge as a sprint finisher. He was actually not getting up at all last year in the sprints, but this year he's come back to his old sprinting form, and yesterday produced that superb sprint which tipped the demon sprinter Jumadalina Abdu-Japarov, who's earning himself quite a reputation in this year's Tour de France. He's had a great battle today with his arch rival, Johan Museeuw, and he's beaten him in both sprints where it's mattered for the small bonuses out on the course. He's up into 2nd place overall now, Abdu-Japarov, but I think with the time trial to come tomorrow, his dreams of wearing yellow might not be realised.
5 kilometers to go, and that was 28 seconds, so it's coming down a little bit at a time all the time there. There's a Carrera rider now coming to the front to try and help these riders. Everybody really wants to bring it back together for their man to dispute the stage victory. I think that's Nico Verhoeven just going through there from PDM in the black and white jersey, then Mark Sargent going through for Panasonic.
And there's Greg LeMond forcing his way through at the bottom of our picture, leading the charge upon the inside nearest our camera. Just keeping out of trouble, you see, gets within 6 or 7 men of the head of the field, moves into the slipstream again, making sure he keeps away from the possibility of crashes like you could have here, where the riders now filter both sides of the track. It's rather like watching the derby now, Paul, on both sides of the course. And 18 seconds is the gap, and we could well be coming down to a big group sprint, and it's a very narrow approach into Argentan. It's not a big city at all. It's a small town here in Normandy. And just after the riders do cross the finishing line, the brakes will go on heavy because they swing round a very tight right-hand bend before they can stop. It is quite a hairy old finish here.
There they were, the neutral service car, the yellow Mavic vehicle's being moved away, so it's coming down all the time. 5 seconds to 15 seconds left to go. And all the riders want to stay near the front because of these directional islands. Every time they come to one of these, the bunch splits into 2 there. That's what's been provoking a lot of the crashes in the last few days, and that's why we saw Greg LeMond moving to the front there to keep out of danger.
So beneath this rather pretty Normandy sky, the 4 breakaways are now being pulled back, and they can almost see the finishing line, and that is the fortunes of war in the Tour de France. Rolf Goltz out in front from kilometre 60. Now as we come up to kilometre 1:06.65 it'll be. He's about to be swept up by the peloton, and it could be the sprinters having their real day here today. And what a field day if we get Museeuw and Abdu-Japarov clashing again at the finish, Paul.
Well, that could be quite an aggressive sprint, because there I think it's all over for these boys. They've been holding off for the last 30 kilometers, but it looks now as if it's going to come down to a big, massive sprint. As long as the teams with the big sprinters there keep their tempo up and stop somebody jumping away. Remember how Neidem jumped clear of this peloton a couple of days ago. That's what somebody will try and do when we come into the town here. There are 1 or 2 little corners, and that's where we would expect to see a lone man trying to clear away.
So the arrowhead of the Tour de France finds its target and pulls back these 4 men. And now the sprinters will be taking their domestiques, their team helpers, and saying, get me through this lot and get me up to positions 2 or 3 in the front so I can take care of them in the sprint finish. And Abdu-Japarov is the rider we should watch out for. They're 2 kilometers from the finish. He's the rider in the green jersey. He's very easy to pick out. And if you see a rider in a pink jersey, that should be Johan Museeuw, because he is the rider who has been battling it out with Abdu-Japarov. But we've got a launch on the left of the road here. And I think we've got Museeuw up into 2nd place, so he's got himself off to a good start.
Well, it's all back together now, and it looks as if it's going to be a big bunch sprint. That rider on the front taking the lead now is Phil Anderson. You can tell by that style. He's got the aggressive style. Attacks are coming all the time now. A Lotto rider going clear.
I think it might well be Museeuw who's gone. It's one of the Lotto boys here, tried to get... Oh, my goodness me, nearly clipped the feet of those barriers as well. It looks like Sammy Morel's, actually. on the far right. He's gone back into second place. It certainly isn't Johan Museu. Phil Anderson there being brushed around a little bit as he disappears, about 5th place in line. But now they're beginning to make their run for the line here. The TVM team are taking them on at the front with 1 kilometre to go.
1 kilometre to go. Etienne de Wilde is in there. Everybody's looking for their sprinter. They're looking over their shoulders. It's the cameraman, I think, trying to pull out there. Van Poppel's in the front there. Museo is there. Rudy Darnen's there. We're going to have an incredible sprint finish here with about 700 metres to go.
Well, Van Poppel is the tall rider in white with the sunglasses. If you can see him, he won 3 stages of the Tour of Spain. He's not had the good finish here. This is Falk Boden, who's leading them out at the front, the new champion of Germany. And Falk Boden is thinking of his teammates now for the big sprint finish, and that's Van Poppel. And Van Poppel, I think it is moved onto the shoulder of Falk Boden as they come tight round the bend there. There they are, the 2 PDM boys hitting the front now. Kelly is with them as well. PDM are heading now for 1, 2 and 3, and there's a clash of shoulders there with Johan Museo as they take it wide on the finish. But I think that's Van Poppel who's gone clear. As Remming Stump comes on the far right of the picture, Van Poppel's going to take it on the line. They've got the win at last. As they come up towards the line, Van Poppel cheekily looking over his shoulder. Museo is trying, but he's not going to make it. Jean-Paul Van Poppel is, though. He gets the victory on the line as they go over and break and turn round that right-hand bend. It's a very difficult sprint finish, but the PDM boys read it absolutely spot on. As they came round that bend, they had 3 men in the first 3. And Van Poppel was the winner on the line. Now here is how the PDM boys did it. The 4 of them, in fact, lined up here for the sprint. I don't know how they got 4 men through there. But as they went for the line, it was Jean-Paul Van Poppel who got his head nicely. I think that's Sean Kelly nearest the camera in second place, but then came the rush of the other sprinters. And Kelly was washed away, and with it went a possible bonus. So he'll be only second. He'll lose his second place overall tonight, in fact. Van Poppel here takes it very, very easily in the end after just 4 hours of racing.
A look at the stage result first and confirmation of that sprint. Jean-Paul Van Poppel gets his first stage victory of the Tour de France. In second place, Johan Museu, and third, Jan Schur, another man who's now coming up in the sprints. Fourth place, the French sprinter, Laurent Jalabert. So, Jean-Paul Van Poppel on the podium for the first time in this year's Tour de France. A couple of years ago, he won 4 stages in the race on his way to the Green Points jersey. Let's have a look now at the overall situation. Thierry Marie, still the leader tonight in his native department of France. Abdou Japarov has moved up into second place by virtue of the big sprints today out on the course. Sean Kelly drops back to third. Greg LeMond and Eric Breukink are not too far behind. But on the podium tonight, as Thierry Marie pulls on the leader's yellow jersey, he smiles at the crowd, and you might be able to see him mouth the words, "Merci, thank you for the support you gave me out on the route today." One rider finishing in the bunch and looking very uncomfortable, Robert Miller, with a neck bandage on. Let's hope he's rid of that before tomorrow's time trial. And one rider who will not be taking part in the time trial tomorrow, stretchered away from the Tour de France today, Fabio Parra, the great Colombian climber. Well, tomorrow it really is the big stage. It is 73 kilometres of time trial. It's a long way. Normally, Thierry Marie is a great time trialist, but will he feel the effects of that long breakaway yesterday? Of course, Greg LeMond, who today was wearing a special helmet that was wired for sound, I think as a dress rehearsal for tomorrow, when it means his team manager will be able to talk to him during the race. And don't forget, if you have any questions at all to ask me or Paul Sherwin, well, give us a ring. The number at the Tour de France office is 071 631 4444. I'm sorry about my voice today, but I think I've caught something here in Normandy. Let's hope it goes away pretty quickly. For the moment, from Gary, Paul and myself, goodbye.